Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to this Baba Kamadaf Hey. We're going to begin at the very top of Hey and Aleph, very top line. So our Mishnah mentioned there was Arba Avos Nezikin. There was another opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Ishia, there was actually 13 Avos Nezikin. And then afterwards, we also were told in the name of Rav Chia, there's 24 Avos Nezikin. And among them is the din of Edom Zaymimin. So these are cases in which apparently is not a case of mammon, but rather a case of kanas, which the Gemara is going to say right here. So Edom Zaymin b'maynahu listening. The case of Edom Zaymin is a case of mammon. Says Rashi, Dechol hamishalim yoisam ashehizik. Anytime where you have to pay more than the damage, could go in kefil v'tashlum yarba chamisha kari knas. So if you have to pay back more than you're obligated to, it's kanas. So it could go in kol davar kotzav ha'amar b'tayra, could go in chamishim shel einis, mafata, umeya shel moitzi shema, kul havi kanasa. Everything else is mammon. So what is the punishment? You wanted to do to punish this guy, so therefore he gets punished back. So because of this, it's a case of mammon. So we're going to know Sabal Rabbi Kiva the ein mishalman al pi atzman. You don't actually pay on your own. Says the Gemara in Makos. Rashi quotes, Ein Mizaymin in Mishalmin al pi atzman. The Ein Mizaymin don't pay based on their own testimony. Can go on. Im huzma bastin zeh. Let's say they were Muslim in a bastin. So a bastin actually, there's a second group of witnesses saying Imanu Ha'isam Macham Plaini. Lo hispek bal din lo hamidim bedin. However, they didn't actually have the completion of the court. They went somewhere else. And they end up admitting to their faults. Whose manu bebeistino shel ploini, that we were already found guilty in another court. Peturin alma kanasa who might have kanas potter. The fact that you're potter must be it's a case of kanas, because only might have been kanas potter, not by mammon. So therefore, it must be the din of Edom Zayim is really a case of kanas. It's really a case of kanas. So you said Rabbi Kiva listening trey gavni shor, listening shor de azik shor, listening shor de azik adam. In fact, we're going to hold like Rabbi Kiva. Then we should hold two different cases of a shor. One that damages an ox, one that damages a person. Says Rashi, yesh chiluk ben tashlumin shel shor de azik shor. When an ox gores another ox, the loy mishalom el chatzi nezik. You only pay half damages. Letashlumin shor de azik adam. A tam, when it comes to injuring a person, you would have to pay nezik shalom according to him, as we're going to see later on. And we'll see here. Did not Rabbi Kiva Omer af tam shechava ba'adam shalom b'moiser nezik shalom. So the question is, if we really hold like Rabbi Kiva, then we should hold like him all the way. And he actually holds just a chiluk between an ox goring an ox and an ox goring a person, that even the first time that a tam gores with its horns on a person, you still pay nezik shalom. So ha tavri. So where it says it's broken. Rabbi Kiva l'gazize Sanya. Rabbi Kiva oimer yochel aftam shechava ba'adam yishalom in haliyah. You would think that when it comes to a tam that damages a person, that you should have to pay min haliyah. As we said before, normally nezik shalom you have to pay min haliyah. So when it comes to a person who gets damaged by an ox, it doesn't matter how cheap the ox is, you still have to pay the full damages. We find that it's not true. We actually only have to pay magufo and not min haliyah. So therefore, since Rabbi Kiva holds that, there is no distinction. That when it comes to a tam who damages a person, or a behema, the din is, even if it's true, maybe you do pay nezik shalom, but in both cases you pay min aliyah. Do not pay min aliyah, you only pay magufay. Okay. Prat Gemara. All these cases are mamoin. So manavshach. In nezek, if we're talking about these cases are damage, so tanale, it's already mentioned. among the list. Yitzar Tanalev, it's the pain it's mentioning. Boishes Tanile, Pagam, Tainu Nezek. Maisalach Lamemer Kanas, but Kanas Kamayri. Again, he doesn't mention anything about Kanas. Also on the list, someone who is Matama Truma, or someone who mixes Truma and Chulin together, or someone who's involved in the creation of Yain Nesach. This is the case of Mamoin. Says Rashi Madameya, for some reason it says it again here. Me'ariv Truma im Chulin shel Chavero. Dahashta mazbin lehu b'zoil, has to be sold for less. Because only a Kohen can eat it, right? So it doesn't have the same financial same value. Menasech, which again Rashi said kind of already over in the previous Amud. Shenisach yain chavero abodazar, but also bahana hoy abod be ma'isa begufa de yain. So yain nesach is also completely bahana. In all these cases, the mamayna who listening. So why don't we mention them? The answer is manashach. Hezek shenu nikr shmei hezek. If we're dealing with a hezek which is not recognizable, which is the case because you touched this truma, let's say it's tamei, it's a mix, you don't see the actual damage, or yain nesach. You don't actually see that damage was created, even though it's also banah. So hatanui nezek. That's the same thing as damages. Hezek shenu nikr lo shmei hezek. So then why are you chayiv here? So abli kanas lo kamayri. It doesn't mention kanas. So leimek sub Rav Chia. Why don't we say the Rav Chia who mentions it's 24 avos nezikin? It must be that he holds that hezek she'enu nikr lo shmei hezek. He must hold it's not hezek. The ishmei hezek hatanui nezek. One of the 24 was already nezek. So why would he mention these cases? It must be he's teaching you that these are cases which is a hezek she'enu nikr and it's not hezek. So the Gemara is not necessarily Tana Hazeka de Minkara, but Tana Hazeka de Lo Minkara. So it's shaykh that that you would end up being mechalik between them, and therefore you need to mention both, because one is a hezek which is recognizable nezek, and it could be another nezek again, even though which is not nicker. So therefore both of them need to be mentioned. The Rashi before. It says like this: Yochi shalom tam shechava ba'adam min aliyah tamad loyim ba'ashkan d'lo mishalom nesek shalim el kamoisha asher shava. That, as we saw, that if an animal is a tam, you aren't always going to collect nesek shalim when it hurts a person, since you only pay megufay. So that was the pshat. So you pay min aliyah, but the truth is, it's not true. We pay megufo. So if you only pay megufo, you may not always pay nezek shalom. Okay. That was the point. Fighter. Bishlo matani didan, our Tana, which is our Mishnah, Tana minyana. He mentions 4. Why does it say 4? We can count. Shor, bor, mam, maver. It's muted Rabbi. It excludes 13. Rabbi Tana minyana muted Rav Chia. And he mentions 13 to exclude 24. El minyan Rav Chia muti mai. Why does he say 24? What could he be excluding? Muti moiser umafagil. It's coming to exclude moiser, someone who's an informer, which causes his friend's money to be taken away and given to Ovikachavim. Or if you're dealing with Rashi as a kohen that shechted a carbon of Yisrael, for example, chatas l'shem shlomim, dana carbon oil chaybas bala v'sar chacher, because it was a chatas, but you had in mind it should be a shlomim, so it's pigel, and that carbon is not accepted, and therefore the owner has to bring a new carbon. So velisni. So why don't we mention these cases? So bishul mafagil b'kashim l'kamayri. We don't want to mention kachim, even though it is a damage, but it's kachim. So we only want to talk about non-kachim items. El meiser my time otani the shani meiser didibur l'kamayri. When it comes to speech, that just through words alone, that is why you're punished. That we don't mention. We only want to mention a nezek, some type of a damage, which is an action. The problem is, if you look at this list of 24, there are plenty that the punishment is through dibur. For example, Moiti Shemra, the man is claiming that she's not a basula, and he just is Moiti Shemra about her. So that's words. That's a dibor that is linked to an action, namely be'ila, about the notion of having relations. It's all words. The lace b'maisa, there's no action. Who b'katani? No hazamaka the lace b'maisa rachmanik kari maisa. Even though there's not an action, the Torah calls it an action. As it says, "V'asisim kasher zamam lasois l'achiv," like you wanted to do, right? T'chsiv v'asisim kasher zamam lasos l'achiv. So therefore, even though it's not an action, the Torah calls it an action. So therefore, it can be mentioned. Question 1. El avos nazikin meditani Rav Chia havilei mazik b'dibur deispe maisa. What are considered to be dibor with maisa? So one is Moiti Shemra as well as Adam Zayman, as we see here. Bishlam Latani Didan. Tan Abba Ismachadika told us. And we spent a whole lot of time breaking down all the toldos of just those 4. Now we can do it for 24. El Rav Chia, Rabbi Ishia, Abba Ismachadika told us and mind you. What are the toldos? Rabbi Abo, Kul and Avos, they're all like Avos, Hashem, Mametav, they have to pay the best. My time, so they learn out through this string of psukim through Gzer Shabbos the din. So my karma, what does this mean? Amar Zvin Mishmei the Rabbi says the name of Rabbi Hachi Karmer. They just mentioned one, but taste idach minei, and learn the other one from it. So we say you can't learn out one from the other. My karma, what's being said? So I remember Sharshim Mishmei the Rabbi Hachi Karmer. This is what's being said. Lichtoi, as we continue to Ham and Vase. Lichtoi Rachman Atarti. Just mention 2. Don't mention all 4. Just mention 2. And Matesi Idach Meinayu, and we can learn out the other ones from it. Hada Omer Chadam Atarti Lo Asi. You can't learn 1 from 2. You can't learn 1 from the other 2. Omer Rabba. Vakulhu, in all of these cases. And Rashi helps us out with that. Okay. Vakulhu, in all of these cases, Ishadis Bor Binayu. If you put bor together with one other, Asyakuhu b'matzad. You can actually learn out a matzad from all the other ones. Lebar mekaren, not Karen. Mishum de'ikel mifrach malakuhu shchin muadam etchilasam. Karen is different because you're Tom, and then you become a muad after goring a few times. The other ones, you're a muad and you pay Nesek Shalom immediately. So you can't use Bor and Karen to learn out the other ones. But you could learn Bor and the other ones to learn out the other ones. Okay, now let's just stop there for a second and let's look at some of this Rashi. Iksiv Bor, cool. Iksiv Bor, v'chad mihanach. If it said Bor and one other one, asikul me'ahu me'iduch, besad hashava. The ikasiv Bor v'Karen, if it mentioned Bor and Karen, asi shein minayu. You would think you could learn shein from it. The iksiv Bor v'Karen, if it has both of them, asi shein minayu, hachi. Ma Bor shein darka leilech l'hazichayev. Even though it's not moving, you can still be chayev. Shein shedarka leilech. So when it comes to a tooth, in which it's eating, which is the way to go and to eat food and damage, it's created to do damage. So then keren yochiach. And then again you go back. Mal keren shechin kavanas lahazik. Bor yochiach. Because you're din, asad hashem shem heshed lahazik v'mayin chalchulu. Afani avi yashain v'chein regel mekeren ubor. You can learn them all of them. Skipping to the 4th wide line. The cool one, tchilas adin. Ma bor shein darka leil chahazik chayiv. Elu cool one shedarka leil chahazik go koshikain. So you need bor to teach you this like kavachomer that even when it comes to a pit, which isn't actually going out of its way to do damage, you can still be chayiv. However, skipping about 8 lines in Rashi, Abu Karen will ask the Demal Latzad Hashamashimhen Shemuadim B'chilas and Temer B'Karen. You need to learn Karen and Bor to learn everything else. But if not, you can't learn Karen from the others. So if you have Karen and Bor, then you can learn it, but you cannot learn Karen. You cannot learn Karen from the others, because you would maybe think Karen is different because it's not as strict, because it's not muad mitchilasim. Okay, so it's a little bit of an interesting twist. You could learn Karen and Bor, but you can't learn everything else to teach you Karen. Okay. You can actually say Karen is stronger because it's kavanas lahazik. Its intention is to do damage, so therefore maybe that's more of a reason to say that you're going to be chayiv, and therefore you could learn out everything else from Karen and Bor. So why is it mentioned? If in fact you could learn out of matzad, so why do we mention these four? It's to be able to learn that each one has a special din. Karen l'chal bein tamul muedes. Karen, as we know, horn, is a difference between a tam and a mued, whether you pay chatzi nezek or nezek sholem. Shein v'regel l'poitim b'shus rabim. As we said before, it has to be v'ir b'stei acher, that it goes into another property, not into rishus rabim. So shein v'regel, you're potter rishus rabim. Bor potter b'as a kalim. When it comes to a bor, it potters kalim. In other words, if a kli falls into a bor, so in that situation you're going to be potter. Rashi doesn't say anything. And Rabbi Yehuda, this kalim b'bor. It's actually machlokas. Rabbi Yehuda holds that if a kli falls into a bor, you are chayiv for the damage. Lifter boas adam. It potters a person, says Rashi. Pointers adam kidarshin and shorvul adam. It's only when an ox falls in, but not if a person falls in. So you're not chayiv if a person falls in, because a person should have had more das than to notice that there was a pit there. They have mazel. Adam l'chayiv b'arba devarim. We know adam is unique because in addition to paying nezek, you also have to pay tsar, ripur, shevus, and boishas. Eish. Lifter b'as hatalmud. It excludes something which is hidden. What does that mean? If it's something hidden inside, says Rashi, the pasuk says, "Oy hakama," standing grain. V'darshinan b'shulei hakainis sign ladir. We're going to see makama b'golui, just like the open grain is out in the open. Afkol golui, also in the open. Lafuki tamoin deloi. Now, when it comes to something which is hidden, in that situation, it can be potter when it comes to ish. According to Yehuda, you take a chayiv on tamuin when it comes to Eish. So then what is unique about fire? As we continue to Vav Amud Aleph, we asui licha nirai b'sachsacha avanav. When you scorched a plowed field, or you burn up stones. So in that situation, that's what it's coming to add. Says Rashi, Shimlicha Eish Charishasei Shel Chaveroi Oy Sichsacha Avonav Chayiv Ba'avonim. You're chayiv. You're actually going to be chayiv when it comes to these things. It says Ba'avonim Shaykh Loshen Sichsach Rashi Shol Nisrafu Legamri. It wasn't completely burnt up. El Shesichsacha V'Nidbeka Ha'Eish Bahen, like the fire hit it. So in that situation, you're going to be chayiv as well. So we learn out from here that this is l'chayiv b'davar shein roy loki going hacha shein ikar eish b'kach. Okay, this is not like the typical way a fire can destroying something. Question 2. Mas kinon b'gemar dekul avois asim b'matzat. They really can learn them all out from one another, for the most part. So Rachmana l'hilchasem kasvinu. And they're only mentioned in order to teach their halachas. Mehen hilchasein debor v'eish. So when it comes to bor, either to say that you're potter from kalim, or you're potter when it comes to a person that falls in. When it comes to eish, you're either it's either coming to tell you that you are potter from tamoin. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're takachayim from tamoin if it's hidden. So he comes to say it's going to include that you're going to be chayiv a scorched plowed field or scorching up stones. Okay. Let's see maybe a couple questions and we'll stop. TA 23. Minyan Rav Chiya l'miyutei mai. So two things, as we saw on Hamad Aleph. It's coming to exclude Meiser and Pigel, which is TA 23. And then he says, Umadu be'emes lotani lahu. So why doesn't it mention these things? Because it's there, this is all Dibor. Let's see how he writes it. Moiser dibur lo kamari. Oh, umafagel mishum de bekachim lo kamari. Okay. Okay. Fine. Next one we'll do it tomorrow. Question TB 24. Tanu Rav Chiya arba v'esar malbas nasikin min yadu Rav Chiya muti mai kari luhu abus v'kari toldos v'hari toldos ein lahem. So there's a couple points. So min yadu Rav Chiya miyuti pigul meiser v'kulam shovim shehizik chav hamazik v'shalom tashlumim b'meitav adkan.